The next one up here is, you need to get something? Great. The next one up here is a panel discussion. It's called Warriors, Wisdom, and Leadership. Women Trailblazing the Transformation to Sustainability. Yeah, let's have a little warm-up clap. We've got a superstar lineup of panelists, and the moderator is Amanda Ellis. Amanda's an author. She's the New Zealand ambassador, or she has been the New Zealand ambassador to the United Nations, and she's currently serving as the executive director for the Hawaii and Asia Pacific programs for the Arizona State University Julie Ann Wrigley's Global Institute of Sustainability. So I'm not going to steal any more of their time. I'm going to turn it over to the moderator to introduce her panelists.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings in Māori, the indigenous language of New Zealand. Climate change is not gender neutral. In fact, for those of you who have been reading Drawdown, you will know that the existing inequalities make women and girls disproportionately vulnerable to impact from disease right through to natural disasters. And yet, this is a hopeful panel. This is a panel of ekko warriors and innovators. This is a panel that is going to show you why, when we add number 6 and 7 of Drawdown together, girls' education and women's rights, we end up with the number 1 solution to climate change. Some 120 gigatons. So this is not a soft panel. This is a hard panel, but it is a panel inspired by 2 incredible women leaders, Julie Wrigley and Sylvia Earle. Some of you heard Sylvia Earle on day 1 ask us all, what is your special talent? What is your contribution? And what is your power to influence change? And you heard Julie yesterday talking about her personal journey, that aha moment with the abalone that turned into a lifelong quest to turn her passion to create positive change into a scalable solution through education at ASU. One of the panelists earlier talked about an existential moment, and I had an existential moment here last year at AREDAY in talking to Julie and Gary. If anyone had said to me 2 years ago I would have joined the team at a university I then had never heard of before and would have found this to be the most exciting, wonderful group of brilliant people to work with, I would have said you were crazy. So thank you, AREDAY, for a unique connection. And that is what the women panelists are going to be talking about today. Their aha moment, what took them to their business model, and then how they're taking that to scale to really make change. So we have an incredible panel today. From Osprey, Orielle Lake, who is the founder of We Can, the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network. She works with women's wisdom from the highest levels with policymakers right down to grassroots solutions. And many of you will have seen the incredible work that she did with women, Indigenous women, and corporates featured a couple of days ago. Next, Brianne West, who hails from my native Aotearoa, New Zealand, who is an entrepreneur and innovator. She has a biology degree at university, and it's when she was doing that degree at the University of Canterbury that she had a real aha moment. And am I allowed to tell it, or are you going to tell it? So Brianne was in the shower and had just learned this terrible fact, which in fact is going to be the first prize that we give out. Can anyone guess how many plastic bottles head to landfill every year from just shampoo and conditioner? 1 billion? Do I have an advance on 1 billion? 6 billion? 8 billion? Do I have an advance on 8?
30 billion.
30 billion? Do I have an advance on 30 billion? 40? 80 billion. $80 billion. So Julie, I know you need to designate someone to come and get your prize, but if you could designate we will give you a prize of one of Brianne's wonderful products. So everybody who answers a question correctly, you get a prize. So this was Brianne's aha moment. She had found out about all these plastic bottles from shampoo and conditioner going to landfill, and she was in the shower looking at the bottle of soap and the bottle of shampoo, bar of soap, bottle of shampoo, and this little light bulb went on, and she said, well, why couldn't I make bars of shampoo? And that is just what Julie has been given. And Brianne got some fabulous news. When I first met her 2 years ago, she and her mom were actually making these handmade bars and packaging them in the kitchen. 2 years on, she has 2 factories, and she's about to sign a deal with one of the largest pharmacies, not just in the US, but globally. So, very exciting. And next to Brianne, Jen Nielsen from Australia, from Ekko World. And Jen is a corporate guru. I've known her for many years. And she's one of those brilliant serial entrepreneurs, always starting businesses, always making money. And she is now reformed. She's now one of us. She has become a behavioral scientist and, I would venture to say, a communitarian. So she's helping the everyday Joe consumer to make eco choices with a very unique tech platform. Next to Jen is Kristen Linzy from ASU. And Kristen is another one of the brilliant grads from ASU, recently graduated with a master's in global technology and development. She is currently the program manager for an innovation called SolarSPELL, which is an offline solar-powered digital library for remote communities and going to scale with the Peace Corps all over the world. And finally, last but not least, Sandra Kwak, who is the 10 Power founder and CEO. She is a social business owner, facilitating renewable energy for international communities that don't have access to electricity, and of course, helping to provide finance. So from the policy through to entrepreneurial solutions, tech platforms, education, and then the power of finance to go to scale. So it is now my delight to turn first to Orielle, who is going to give us an overview of why this is such a critical issue. And I wanted to give a little plug for her brilliant book, Uprisings for the Earth, Reconnecting Culture with Nature. She has been described as a sculptor of the future, an artist and an activist.
Thank you. This is the time of women rising, if you haven't noticed. Thank you so much for having me on this panel and the wonderful introduction, and to Sally and Chip again for putting on such a great conference. I want to make a few comments to add to the conversation that's been going on here for the last few days around narrative and story. But before I do that, I want to contextualize for a lot of you why women are so important, because somehow innately we know this is the time of women rising. We have indigenous elders telling us this is the time of women. We have the Dalai Lama saying Western women are going to save the world. We know across the board that we need balance in our society. We have 2 reports that are on our website. One is the Women's Climate Action Agenda, where we detail in great length the statistics around why women are so key. As an example, 60 to 80% of all household food production in developing countries is done by women. We've had these panels talking about food security and food sovereignty. You better include women in that conversation because they're producing the food. We've also come out last year, we released a really wonderful online program where you can look and see all the different things that women are doing. It's called Women Speak, Stories and Case Studies from the Front Lines of Climate Change, where we've have 15 different categories: women and food, women in water, women in policy, women in fossil fuel resistance, with thousands of stories from all over the world, because we really wanted everyone to have an opportunity to see what is this narrative that we're bringing. So this word narrative has come up a lot the last few days. So this is a way and a resource all of you can look and see why are we talking about women rising and why women are so essential to the climate change movement. Our organization is very multifaceted. We are lifting up women's voices around their leadership, forest protection, climate solutions, climate trainings. We advocate at the UN climate talks. You saw the other day that we're bringing frontline communities to have very high-level conversations with bankers talking about fossil fuel divestment. So we have a variety of programs all talking about what women are doing. I don't want to go into that because you can look on that on our website. What I want to say now that I feel is really important to this conversation is that in addition to really bringing forward this conversation of narrative, what's happening underneath and what all of you are involved in that excites me is that we are looking at systems change. We are in an incredibly potent moment, and part of that is opening up the voices that have been oppressed. Because when we do that, we make ourselves whole as a society. We begin to heal our relationship with each other and with Mother Earth. So we're a rights-based organization, and we are lifting up those voices. One is around the rights of women and the fact that one of the big systems that has to change is patriarchy, and we should call it out and say what it is, because we've been living in these systems of patriarchy for thousands of years, and leaving women's voices out has not done well. Another right in our organization that we focus on is Indigenous rights. We also need to call out colonization, because the fact is all over the world, people who have been close to the land have been under these systems of oppression of colonization. 80% of all the biodiversity left on Earth right now is in the lands of Indigenous peoples. It becomes all of our duty to stand up for our Indigenous allies, our Indigenous communities, because their innate connection with their territories and lands is one of the most powerful ways to protect water, forests, and all the different sacred systems of life. We also stand up for the rights of nature. Another oppressed voice is if we're living here without the living rivers, the living mountains, the living streams, and the oceans, and really, again, remembering that we're with this living Mother Earth, and she has rights. And there's an entire rights of nature movement that we've discussed a little bit, and it's something that we also have in our agenda. How do we give nature rights and recognize nature, again, as a rights-bearing entity equal to human rights? And last but not least, future generations. And how do we have the rights of future generations being recognized? And a lot of our Indigenous elders tell us that they form their entire governance structures and their systems around looking at the 7th generation. And this is something that women carry deep within us as mothers, as aunties, as sisters. We know we carry the generations. And so women are carrying this knowledge of the 7th generation, that we don't make decisions just based on the financial bottom line of this year, but what is going to have our tribe, our people, our children survive. So these are 4 rights that we are working with. I'm sure I'm probably close to my time being done. So the last thing I want to bring up for bringing into this conversation is that I don't want us to be afraid about talking about the fact that we are directly working to dismantle these systems of oppression. We are in a fight, and we should not pretend we're not. And it doesn't mean that we can't be hopeful and excited and the incredible solutions that have been offered here. But let's not fool ourselves. And I know from going to a lot of these meetings what we're up against. And we live in an administration that obviously is undoing so much of things that we have fought for years. This has been a great time of awakening, and we need to utilize it well. And we also need to really consider that as we're talking about all this new renewable energy and what we want to do to transition off of fossil fuels, that we look at it from a feminist perspective, which is really a just transition, meaning frontline communities up front. We really need to understand those who are impacted first and worst and really let their voices be heard, because not only are they being impacted the most, the innovation coming out of frontline communities is astonishing. And I think it's really important that we include their voices fully, because I think we're going to really find some very important solutions so that when we come through this cycle, we come through with justice, accountability, liberty for all, and that it's really a community that is not one that got us into this crisis, but one that is really a place where we all share equal freedoms with each other and Mother Earth. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Osprey. And I think that's set the scene so well when we think about this idea of just transition and systems change. Julie mentioned yesterday the Sustainable Development Goals. And we mustn't forget either that for the first time in human history, we actually have a blueprint for the future we want by 2030, which was negotiated and agreed on by all 193 UN countries. Everybody's still in at the moment. And of course, SDG 5, gender equality and the empowerment of women, has been agreed as pivotal to the whole agenda. So I think Osprey is negotiating from a position of power that this just transition, the systems change she is talking about, actually has the whole power of the global community behind it. We need to harness that. Thank you so much, Osprey. Brianne, our entrepreneur innovator, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Quick question to start off with. How many bottles, containers, jars, pots do you think that the average woman uses when she gets ready in the morning? Hands up for 5. Hands up for 10. What about 12? It's actually 14.
Did anyone get 14? I'm giving out prizes.
Oh, yeah.
Someone over there was close.
There was a few 12s.
Oh, okay. 12, come and get your prizes. Everyone who
plenty of
had a
them.
12, come and get your prizes. Carry on. We want you all to try these fabulous products and be converted.
That's a good way of getting it out there.
So hand grabbing for the audience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyone else? I hope there's one left for me.
There's loads.
Keep talking. Keep talking. Keep talking.
Okay, so that's 14 bottles, containers, jars, pots that will statistically never be recycled. They will outlive you, me, our children, our children's children. And whilst that amount of plastic heading to the landfill is alarming, what's much more alarming is the fact that that 8 million tonnes heads to the ocean every year. That's about a fully loaded dump truck every minute. By 2050, there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish. I don't need to go on to you guys about the problems that's causing. It's illustrated on the screen to start with. But if we don't do something now to turn this tap off, our children and our children's children will look back at us as being one of the last generations that could eat fish, swim on a reef, or even just swim in the ocean without swimming through our own plastic waste. So I started Ethique in 2012 with this grandiose goal of ridding the world of plastic bottles, starting with the cosmetics industry. Instead of liquid products, we produce solid bars of concentrated product like shampoo, conditioner, body lotion. We've even got a self-tanner. It's not soap. It is exactly what you'd get out of a liquid bottle of a face cleanser, but you add the water, not us. Shampoo can be about 70% water, and conditioner is far worse at about 95%. And does that not seem crazy when you've got water in your bathroom? By not putting the water in the product at manufacture, it makes far more sense economically and environmentally to freight it around the world, not to mention the rest of it. So far, we have saved the world from over 400,000 plastic bottles. And I will point out that only 2 years ago, we were still operating out of my kitchen. But when we started, we aimed for 1 million by 2020. We'll actually hit that this year. So that's slightly ahead of schedule and very exciting. All of our bars are wrapped in compostable packaging, so cardboard that's free of laminates and plastics and any kind of coating. So you can throw it in your compost bin, or if your town doesn't compost, you can bury them in the garden, or your plant pot if you have one. I believe that business should be made to be responsible for their entire product's life cycle, and that is not just the product, it's also the product packaging. Every single time, I'm sorry if there's any Coke execs here, every single time you see a picture of ocean plastic, there is a Coke bottle or lid in it. That's just an example. I started Ethique to show companies it is possible to be sustainable in every sense of the word. I believe that business is the greatest vehicle for change, and it works faster than governments. So join the revolution and give up the bottle. Woo! Woo!
So a really interesting point, business being the greatest vehicle for change and for social change. Does anyone know how much could be added to the global economy if there were to be a level playing field? And that means if women were able to compete without the kind of legislative impediments that currently exist. Anyone have a guess?
5 trillion.
5 trillion. Do I have an advance on 5 trillion? These are numbers from McKinsey. 8 trillion, 10 trillion. Do I have an advance on 10? 15?
I'll go
20? Chip, close, getting close. 25. Do I have a slight advance on 25? Not quite 30? 25, 20, 27. Who said 27 trillion? Come and get your prizes. So McKinsey estimates that as much as 27 trillion could be added to the global economy if entrepreneurs like Brianne were able to operate on a level playing field with male counterparts. And the last question is, how many countries still have discriminatory legislation, laws that prevent women from being economically active on the same basis as men? 70, 90, over 90%. Somebody said 90%. Come and get your prizes. So 91% of countries still have discriminatory law. It's not a level playing field. Jen, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you very much for having me from the other side of the world. I haven't got a prize, no, sorry. Ekko World is a platform designed to pragmatically influence the everyday Joe and Joe on any first world street by trying to influence his planetary consumption behaviours. Things like how to do, be and buy eco products like this one, give loyalty to local business, readily recycle anything, including animals, hair, food, batteries, and humans too. I can explain. As well as eco tips, tricks and hacks. And no, it's not about burying someone you're not particularly keen on in the backyard and because they're compostable. Ekko World is gaining good momentum, and you can see it on this slideshow if it moves. It doesn't look like it's moving. Which one is it? You have to click it. It's taken on a life of its own. You can, excuse me, you can see it on this slideshow, but our driving ambition for, I'm just going to ask my colleague to just push it for me. Thanks very much. The reason, I'll explain. Our driving ambition for refining the eco sales pitch is the thing that I think may be of more value to you than me walking you through what our website is today. So here's how it goes. When we started Ekko World, we figured that our everyday Joe would surely become a more responsible person if he just understood his impact on the planet and that there were better options around. But as Ekko World began to gain traction, we started to realise that Joe simply didn't seem to care as much as we thought he should. So over the next few years, by tracking buying habits, attitudes, trends and media, we've developed a conspiracy theory about Joe's seeming lack of interest in becoming more eco, and it has come to define our mission. We wondered how responsible Joe really was for his bad eco behaviour, and if there was a clue to a piece of puzzle that was missing. And we actually discovered a few. We now believe that to influence the planetary diet of first world consumers, and that includes all of us here, that there are three undeniable things that we need to be okay about. Consumerism is a hapless addiction. Guilt is inevitable. And eco-leadership has to be useful in the context of Joe himself or herself. The consumerism addiction is fed, think about this, by relentless big business marketing, day in, day out, marketing addiction to instant, latest, everything, disposability. The fact of consumer addiction has to be understood because the trouble starts when Joe tries to fix the addiction. So imagine if you were a reforming alcoholic and every day on your way to the AA meeting, there was someone on each corner offering you alcohol. That's pretty much the picture of Joe trying to be a reforming eco-citizen under siege from relentless counter-marketing. Now, guilt. It took us the longest time to understand why guilt is so pervasive about all things eco. The thing is, there isn't just one addiction. There are hundreds of addictions. So as soon as you fix one, there's always another. And the more you fix, the more you know, the guiltier you get. And leadership by those who can, not by those who we think should. As leaders, and of course this room is full of them, we all know that often it's about finding ways to make complex issues simple rather than simply lecturing about issues. In this case of Joe, we really need to make sense in a climate of ambiguity, and that involves a kind of mothership leadership. This woman's thinking has enabled Ekko World now to solve in fact, our last big global upscale problem, and has handed us a way to realistically support Joe and eco businesses everywhere. It's basically a simple accreditation system rating eco traders that gives Joe simple options to make supported buying decisions, which drives an income model that allows us at Ekko World to keep it free for eco traders, and also delivers an actionable global eco alliance. So let me explain why this is so exciting. The accreditation system is based on an algorithm which takes the existing data from eco accreditors, apps, activists, advocates, educators, and institutions everywhere, and rolls it up into a single transparent star accreditation system that simply signals anyone, anywhere, anytime, how eco a product and its packaging really is. Now, the data I'm talking about is generally accessible, and we have the tech to gather and process it through the algorithm for accreditation. The accreditation rating is something that many micro, small and emerging eco businesses would not otherwise have access to give them that level of credibility. And it gives our Joe and us too a simple buying decision tool. Importantly, the genius in this algorithm is that it also delivers a global eco alliance of the contributors, an alliance of people with a true measure on eco in and of itself. So I'm talking about a global eco-alliance which can extend influence at scale and is a real opportunity to collectively give more oxygen to ways of living that matter through simply influencing everyday Joe's behaviour right across the planet. So I'm not saying it isn't work, but comparatively it's very doable. We're on it, and we'd love you to be in it with us. That's Ekko World.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jen. One of the things that struck me when I looked at this amazing platform and was able to start making choices was the role of food. And I was really interested to see that if food waste were a country, it would rank just behind, what's the number one global emitter? You get a prize. Yes. Number two?
US.
China and the US, yes, prizes. And number three?
India.
Food waste. above India. So that's why it is so important that the work that Jen is doing, aggregating and giving consumers like me that want to do the right thing but don't quite know how to do it, the power to do it. So thank you, Jen. I think it's an amazing prototype. Please come and get prizes, those people who just won. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Kristen Linzy from ASU with SolarSPELL.
All right. Well, first I'd like to thank Amanda for convening this amazing panel, as well as AREDAY for hosting us today. As Amanda mentioned, my name is Kristen Linzy, and I am the program coordinator for SolarSPELL, which is a project housed at Arizona State University. So before I get into details about SolarSPELL, I first want to share a little bit of background information with you. Our project director, Dr. Laura Hosman, has dedicated her career to taking information that's typically only available online and bringing it to the most remote locations and communities around the world in an offline platform. So through many years of in-field experience, she learned all of the barriers, both in terms of infrastructure and environmental, to remote communities having internet connectivity and being able to access the wealth of information that we share every single day on the internet. Using this knowledge, she created SolarSPELL, which is a solar-powered, waterproof, and offline digital library. And this library is intended to provide the content you could find on the internet without actually requiring internet connectivity nor electricity to power the devices.
Woohoo!
All of the content available on the digital libraries is stored on an SD card on the microcomputer that you see in the bottom right-hand corner of the device. This microcomputer also has code written onto it to offer up a Wi-Fi hotspot, and any Wi-Fi capable device, whether that's a cell phone, tablet, or laptop, is able to connect to the digital server and begin to explore the content offered. So this is one example of a SolarSPELL library homepage. I will be walking you through this in a little more depth in a few moments when I do a demonstration of the SolarSPELL. But one thing I would like to point out about this page is the local topics category that you see on the top bar. So SolarSPELL is committed to making every single library that we bring to communities regionally, culturally, and contextually relevant, so that the people making use of these resources are finding videos and PDFs that pertain to the environment they live in every single day. To date, we have over 200 SolarSPELLs in the field across 4 island nations, including Vanuatu, Tonga, Samoa, and the Federated States of Micronesia. And we've also recently expanded to Rwanda and South Sudan in East Africa. In the coming year, we will be deploying an additional 320 units across Fiji, Comoros, Puerto Rico, and Tonto Creek Camp. And I'd like to take a moment to emphasize that the SolarSPELL team was invited to Fiji specifically to bring actionable climate change content. Our in-field collaborators shared with us that communities in Fiji are facing the everyday adverse effects of climate change without having access to information on what is causing climate change or on how they can best respond to the impact they're seeing in their communities. So SolarSPELL employs a train-the-trainer model in which we collaborate with in-field development-minded organizations such as the United States Peace Corps. And the SolarSPELL team trains these collaborators in the use of SolarSPELL, and they remain on site to continue transferring that knowledge and skill sets to local communities as they also learn how to navigate the library. We believe at SolarSPELL that limited resources should never limit an individual's ability to learn and to thrive. And our goal in providing this educational content is to inspire these individuals to become change makers and to feel empowered to enact the change that they hope to see on both a local and a global level. So one thing that we've discussed in many conversations throughout this summit this week is how do we engage the communities that are most often left out of this critical conversation? And I would like to posit that by expanding access to education, we are taking a significant step in achieving that objective. Thank you.
So the obvious question, how many girls are still not in school? 2 million. Oh, too many. Yes. Somebody said 60 million. From over here, it's more than that. Yes, that gets a prize. Brianne's been very generous with bringing her prizes. 120 million, very close. Who said 120 million? Very close.
150 million.
Too many. 125, getting very close. 130, yes. So those who got close, you can come and get a prize too. But 130 million girls not in school. And yet, guess what the number one factor for the survival of natural disaster is? Absolutely, education. So, and finally, this is an incredible statistic. The World Bank just came out with a study at the end of May looking at the costs of inequality in employment, which of course come from not having equality in education. Can anyone guess what that number is? It is truly mind-boggling. 7 trillion and up. 14 trillion and up. 15 trillion and up. 20, 50 trillion, you're not even close.
100 trillion?
100 trillion and up. 150, very close. $160 trillion foregone. You do get a prize, and hopefully you're all learning. But isn't that shocking? $160 trillion foregone due to the inequality in employment as a result of inequality in education. This is why these initiatives are so critical. Please come and get your prizes. And now I would like to introduce our wonderful final speaker, Katie. And we will have a couple of questions after Katie, who's been doing some very innovative work in solar and finance.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sandra Kwak, and I would like to thank Katie Hoffman for giving me her spot on this panel. She invited me this morning when she realized that she would like to see a little bit more minority representation. I'm probably only about 7.5% minority on this panel. But thank you, Katie. And thanks to everyone who's paying attention to creating more intersectional voices, especially in climate discussions. My company is called 10 Power. And I'll have some visuals for y'all on my panel tomorrow. Can everybody do this with me? 10 Power, ready? 10 Power, all right. And 10 Power is bringing renewable energy to people across the planet who lack access to electricity today. Our first market is Haiti, where close to 70% of the population does not have access to an electrical grid. And without electricity, it's really difficult to have access to education, or commerce, or global markets, or manufacture of products, or organizing, or global markets and diplomacy. So electricity fundamentally underpins every single aspect of our life, from self-realization to the basic right of drinking water. And 10 Power arrived in Haiti about 3 years ago when I quit my job in Silicon Valley doing big data for the smart grid. And I came as a humble learner and started visiting projects that had succeeded or failed in spectacular ways. So interviewing communities that had had solar installations done, talking to local solar installers to find out where the holes in the marketplace was. With some of the most expensive electricity in the world and lowest access to electricity, it made absolute sense that Haiti would be harnessing the power of the sun, as they say in Creole, "Gagnons pile soleil." So why is it that solar markets were not thriving there? And we arrived at a couple of key blockers. One of them is access to finance and capital. So while every single person wants solar on their home or business, very few people, even in the US, very few people have enough access to sponsor a solar system outright, just as we need car payments to be able to afford cars or mortgages to afford houses. Finance makes access to renewable electricity accessible. The other missing component was engineering codes and standards. And so while we're partnered with local solar installers, we help with the project development and engineering for the application of international codes and standards to make sure that these are quality solar systems that are going to thrive for the 20-year lifespan plus of the panels. So far, we've put solar on 2 water purification facilities just north of Port-au-Prince. And each of those facilities is providing clean drinking water to surrounding communities at 1/3 of the cost of alternatives, which is usually bottled water.
Fantastic.
Woo! Also, they're providing free drinking water to schools and are in turn supporting micro-enterprises. So these 2 centers are supporting over 600 micro-enterprises that revend the water, and the majority of those are women-led. Our next project, I can't announce the customer, but it's very exciting. It's on an international organization, and this will be one of their first bases to go solar, the Haiti base, which speaks to my theory of regenerative development, where places like Haiti are not trying to be like the US, but rather are moving in a new direction for development. That's not replicating the mistakes, but rather taking the best practices from these markets. And we look at energy access like a ladder. So on the very first step is probably what you think of when you think of energy access, is these small devices that can provide amazing things, access to education, access to lights at night, cell phone charging. And moving up that ladder, we see access for productive uses, which is being able to run businesses, participate in global markets. So 10 Power is really focused on the commercial and industrial scale applications of solar to help these economies to thrive and grow. And moving forward, we're looking at interesting technologies like blockchain and mesh networks and interconnectivity so that we can make our customers anchor tenants in microgrids that are providing 24-hour, affordable, reliable electricity for every single human on the planet.
What a power panel. And does anyone know, last question for a prize, what percentage of women don't even have access to a bank account, let alone finance for business, in the G20 countries, the 20 largest economies in the world? 80%. A little lower. It's not that bad. I'm getting you onto the catastrophic zone here. It's not that bad, no. 40%. Whoever said 40%? Yes, yes. 40% is correct. So now we need to vote because we have 18 minutes and 14 seconds left. Would you like to proceed to the SolarSPELL demonstration, or would you like to have the opportunity to ask a couple of questions from the floor first? Both. SolarSPELL. Okay, SolarSPELL first, and please start formulating your questions, and we will move straight to questions afterwards. So, Kristen, do you need to stand here?
I do.
Great.
Yes, thank you. All right, hello everybody. So I will be showing you the SolarSPELL. I have one in person with me today. I will share before we get started that we typically recommend one SolarSPELL per 25 people streaming at the same time. And given the size of the room today, the AV team here has graciously hooked one of the laptops here up to the SolarSPELL. So what you're seeing on the screens is currently from here. But I also would like to invite everybody in the audience to have the chance to connect as well. So to do that, if everybody on this side of the room would like to connect first, I will walk you through that process, and then midway through my demo, I will have you all connect as well. So, as you've seen, there is a 10-watt, 12-volt solar panel on the outside of our product, which is also waterproof and rugged. It is meant to endure all of the elements that could be faced in the field. So to go ahead and open it up for you, you will see that all of our components are actually Velcroed in, so that it's very difficult for this to come apart in the field. From the solar panel, energy is collected and goes through this voltage regulator you see here before being stored in this power bank. The power bank can simultaneously be collecting energy from the solar panel while also powering this microcomputer you see right here. This microcomputer is known as the Raspberry Pi, and it's actually the second most popular computer in the world behind the MacBook, although almost nobody has heard of it. So in the backside of this Raspberry Pi, we have the SD card that I mentioned that has all of the content and also offers up that Wi-Fi hotspot. So for those of you on this site who would like to connect, if you could go to your devices and go into your Wi-Fi settings, you will see a Wi-Fi option called SPELL in all capital. Go ahead and connect to the SPELL. It might give you a notification telling you that you are not connecting to the internet, and that is true because this is supposed to be for use in communities that do not have internet connectivity. Once connected to the SPELL, go ahead and open up a web browser, and you're going to type in 10.10.10.10. So that's 4 tens total. And after doing so, it will bring you up to this page that you see on the screen. So this is our Pacific Islands library version. And on the top bar, you'll see the 7 content categories as well. So I will walk you through a couple as an example so that we can get to the Q&A. So if you go into environment, you'll see that some of these are videos and some are PDFs. All of this content can be downloaded directly onto your device for use when no longer connected to the server. So I will open up one of the articles as an example, and you can see that it's in high resolution, has a wealth of information available to you. You can open it up big screen, or you can close out to peruse some of the other options. So at this time, I hope everybody's had a chance to connect. If you wouldn't mind connecting to your other Wi-Fi server, I'm going to give this half of the room an opportunity to connect. And just as a refresher, all you do is search for the Wi-Fi network labeled SPELL in all caps, go to your favorite web browser, and type in 10.10.10.10. So again, that's 4 10s total. One other example that I want to show you is one of the videos that we have on here. Oops. All right. Has anybody had any difficulty connecting? Have we all gotten on so far? Okay, fantastic. So we will go to this video here. And so without taking up too much time, because I really do want you to have a chance to ask questions, I just wanted to show you that with even this many devices connected to it, there is no lag, and they are able to stream these videos and to download those videos, as I mentioned, for continued use, even if they end up being on a different island or in another country to use these same resources. So thank you for the opportunity.
And what a wonderful way to help students become internet ready when they do get electricity. Questions? Comments? Yes, at the back. Thank you.
What is your advice to women going into or is already in male-dominated fields?
I think that's one for everybody in the panel. Top tip from everybody, please. Oh, you want to take a few questions? Okay, are there some other questions? Nope, let's go straight ahead with that one. So, Sandra, can we start with you? And I'm so sorry I called you Katie.
Oh, no, it's
fine. Of course, Katie was on the panel earlier.
It's a compliment. Don't compromise yourself. Put yourself in a position where you feel fully empowered. And I really think that every single person who is a climate warrior needs to, we're not plants, we're not rooted to the ground. We have feet, we can get up and we can walk to places where we feel that we are respected and heard. And everyone who is a climate warrior needs to be fully heard and in their power to make a difference.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yes, I would say do your best to be confident and proud of the fact that you have a voice. And if you feel that your voice is not being listened to, then take that opportunity to be innovative and to find a different way around. Don't let that be a stop in your progress, because your voice does need to be heard.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yay!
Could I just say, actually, to that point, I think something like 98% of new eco-businesses are started by women.
Wow.
And often, particularly in the body area, they're started by mothers who have children with issues that can't be, that have problems with normal products. But to answer the question, I am getting on a bit, as you can see, and I think over the years, and I think it's different when you're starting out to when you have more power, but I do think whatever you do, always do the job you're there to do well. Never forget you're a woman, but just make sure you do the job that you do well, because you want to be known for doing what you do well and standing for women as well. But the priority is to do the job that you're there to do, and do whatever you have to do it.
Okay.
I travel with my COO a lot, who's a not much older, sorry, a slightly older male. And we were checking out of a hotel, and the concierge says to him, I hope your meetings went well, I hope you had a successful trip. And then he turned to me and he said, I hope you enjoyed your shopping. This really happened, and I have never been so gobsmacked in my life. But unfortunately, it is something I face relatively often. Whenever I go into a room with a new distributor, there might be one other woman in the room. It's unlikely. All I can say is it's weak, but A, try not to let it bother you. If someone, I find in a lot of meetings, men won't talk to me, they will talk to him. So if that's the case, we don't do business with them. And we tell them why we won't do business with them. And secondly is have really supportive men. Secondly is to have supportive men around you. There's only 2 men in my company. My business partner, who again is older than my COO, so they're both much older, much more experienced, and quite authoritative. So people naturally assume they're in charge, and they will always defer to me. They will always ensure that people know who, in theory, is in charge. And I think that really helps. So get some good men behind you.
A couple of things. Where are you? Oh, there you are. A couple of things. One, I think it starts inside of yourself. And the more that you really get educated about the power that women have, we've been talking about women in business. 80% of all consumer decisions in the United States are decided by women. That's an incredible power to harness. If you're talking about voting power in the United States, more women vote than men. So these are just some examples for you to look at and see the history of women, what women have done, the things that women are doing now. It's incredibly empowering to be educated about the shoulders that you stand on and the incredible women around you. So the first thing is your own internal confidence and who you are and where you stand and who you stand with your other women allies. The second thing is, and there's been studies done on this with women in boardrooms and other circumstances, and we certainly, some of you who saw the work that we were doing with the banks and continue to do, which is mostly us meeting white men, older white men, who don't exactly have a great attitude with us coming into their space in this way, is the role of connecting with other women. And we're seeing more and more when you are allied with other women in different circumstances and not alone, you're able to also gain more power and confidence in women bouncing off of each other and saying, that's a really good idea, and I agree with her. And we know a lot of times in these boardrooms, women will have an incredible idea, and the man next to her will have that same idea, and everybody will look to him and go, that's what we should be doing. And it's really important in that moment for all the other women in the room to go, no, actually, Jane said it first. So we also need to work as a network with women to lift each other up. And so get together with your friends and ensure that you help each other work together.
I hope somebody was taking down those words of wisdom. And I think that's a wonderful opportunity to shout out for supportive men. Chip Cummins, we first connected because you were such a champion for women. And also Sally Ranney, the role that you play in supporting and lifting up other women. Thank you both for your leadership and the role that you play. And now one final question before I ask the panel to wrap up. Yes.
Okay, so my name is Kellen Lane, and I want to make a couple comments, but also ask a question, if that's okay.
Actually, we probably won't have time for the comments, but could you move straight to the question? We've only got 6 minutes and 34 seconds.
Okay, so
thank you.
This is a somber dimension of this issue, but I work for a domestic violence and sexual assault organization. And there are lots of robust statistics on the economic impact alone, let alone all of the other impacts of domestic violence as a major, major, major barrier across the world for women. And 98% of domestic violence relationships involve economic control by their partner, which I think has a contribution to the 40% of women who don't have a bank account. I'll just let you look up your own statistics on it, but I wonder if any of you have any perspective on the influence of abuse, be it from patriarchy or individual relationships, in the barriers and, I guess, potential opportunities you see in moving forward on these issues.
Volunteer for that? Sure. Oh, thank you. You too. Thank you. Osprey first and then Sandra.
So a friend of mine has a social business that was manufacturing high-end clothes in Libya. and they were hiring almost exclusively women because they were coming in and applying for jobs. And almost every week, a couple of women would come into his office to change their last names. And he was saying, well, what's going on? Why are all these women changing their last names? And they would say, well, we were forced into marriages, and now that we have a living, we can divorce our husbands. And a lot of them were married as children. And some of them were forced into marriages across religions, and they were forced to give up their religious beliefs. And so I'm a firm believer that by creating economic opportunities and by recognizing women's potential to participate in renewable energy markets and in all of these new economic activities in the regenerative economy, that we'll be creating equal empowerment across the board, which will enable women to find their own opportunities and fully express themselves.
Thank you.
I think that I agree completely that we need to ensure that women have equity in every field, really, economically and otherwise. But I also think this is part of the systemic change that we're in, where we have to understand we've been living in these systems of a dominator model for a very long time. And so that, again, comes back to a lot of education, both for men and women, to understand that these systems have been very destructive, particularly for women. And so I think there needs to be not only centers for women because they need protection in those situations, but overall in society we're seeing, like the Me Too movement, we're needing to uncover and be able to speak openly about what's happening with domestic violence, but also realize that for, again, these views of dominion over the land, dominion over people of color, dominion over women is a systemic problem. It's been institutionalized, as has racism. And so it's also important that we call these things out, and people are starting to speak out more clearly with these different movements. Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, Indigenous rights at Standing Rock, where we're really calling out these oppressive systems, and that's part of the transition we're in. And I think we need to realize that the violence against women is very connected to the violence against the earth, and that these systems of exploitation and extractivism have to change.
And that harks back to Osprey's wonderful book, Reconnecting Culture with Nature. Now I'm going to ask everybody 30 seconds, starting with you, Osprey, for your one takeaway. So what is it that this incredible gathering of brilliant people might be able to do to help shift the agenda?
I'm going to just say one thing now. There's so many things to say, but I feel like one thing that's really important is we need to encourage women's spirituality because we need the healing that women are offering. And the second thing is our country's in a lot of trouble. Women need to get out there and vote. And I really think it's something that we need to bring into the climate conversation, is we cannot separate democracy from what's happening with the environment. And women do vote more, and I think that we need to really support in our own networks the role of women not only running for office, but also voting.
Fantastic, thank you. Brianne.
I think it's obvious what I want you to do. I want you to put a bar in your shower, and I'm not necessarily saying an Ethique bar. I want you to think about what you buy in the supermarket. Why does it have to be a liquid? It doesn't. Think about what you buy.
Fantastic. Jen.
I really do think there's a big gap in the eco-influence market. I'm sorry, I do talk a little bit more like a business person, I guess, than I should. But the facts of the matter are, there is no real global eco-alliance. There's many sustainable business alliances, but many of those are made up of big business. So I'm talking about an alliance of people whose interests are pure eco-focused. The apps, the creditors, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So
come see Jen.
Takeout, would be, please, she's telling me to be quiet, but please come see me if you're one of those people.
Great, thank you.
I would like to invite everybody in this room or participating online to consider your networks, to consider your own positions, and to think about if you have content that you could contribute to the SolarSPELL, videos that you've created, knowledge that you can share, so that we can have this have a broader reach for the communities who have so much to offer and really deserve this support.
Fantastic.
As a final takeaway, I would say invest with your values. Find investments that really resonate with you, and consider equity. And not just financial equity, but when you're looking at your investment, not only of your capital, but of your time and the way that you spend time and interact with the world, consider social equity. pay attention to the voices that aren't in the room.
Wonderful. And I'm going to wrap up with one line: women rising, systems change, the power of business to create better futures, the mothership leadership and the Global Ekko Alliance, practical education solutions for remote communities that can transform the world. And for Sandra, I loved what you did, and I'd like everybody to join in. We are going to do the regenerative development of 10 power.
Woo!
Woohoo! Woo! Thank you, everybody, and thank the wonderful panel.